the original radio for this car, and my original plan was to send that out, get it working again, and put it back. So I'd have something that would look 100% stock in there and, you know, fit the original hole without any kind of modification at all. But I am a guy who likes to listen to his tunes when I'm riding around in my classic cars, and so I looked at the Retro Sound website, and they do actually have one that fits the 56 and 57 Studebaker Hawks. Had my wife get me this for Christmas, and I'm going to install it in this. It's actually for a GM car. You can see it says Wonderbar on it, which was a GM trademark. But it does fit this 56 Studebaker dash perfectly without any kind of modification. But what it doesn't fit is the original bezel, the original chrome bezel that goes right here. This is designed only for the original radio that was in this car, and it won't work with the new Retro Sound radio I've got. So my challenge today is to create a new one of these out of a piece of aluminum bar. I've got some 3/16 inch aluminum bar that I'm going to custom make one of these that will exactly fit this dash and exactly fit this radio. This is the original Studebaker part that I'm going to try to recreate. This is what I'm going to try to create it out of. That's the basic shape of the piece. Now I know I have to move these lines out about a ½ an inch this way because the new radio that I'm putting in is wider, or the piece that sticks through is going to be wider than this. So we're going to make this line 3.5 millimeters in from the outside on each side, just to keep it consistent. It's important when you're measuring to square everything up. Stuff doesn't get wonky that way. So that's the piece that I'm going to be cutting out and shaping. The holes for where the knobs come through and the big rectangular hole in the center where the face of the radio comes through. I'll take the measurements for those and put those in here after I get the big piece out and shaped rough into the rough shape I want it in. These are the tools that I'm going to be using to shape that aluminum. This is just your basic zip disc. I'm going to put a new one on there pretty soon. This is a smaller zip disc on a Dremel. Belt sander with 120 grit sandpaper. And then just your basic metal files. Nothing fancy at all. I'm trying to recreate that beveled edge on there. You can see on the original piece, the edges of these are beveled. I guess it's about a 45-degree angle. We're getting that shape and getting that bevel roughed in. I need to take it down a little bit on this side. This side's a little bit lower. On this side of it, it's right about 5 centimeters, maybe slightly under 5 centimeters. On this side, I've got 5 centimeters plus 2 millimeters. All right, I've still got this one vertical line here I got to cut down to. It's a little bit higher on this side than on this side. I'm going to use the belt sander to get that even. All right, that did the trick. All right, that'll do it for the power tools for a while. I've got all the basic shapes roughed in, the bevels roughed in on all the sides that need bevels. So I'm going to switch to hand tools now, that is metal files. Okay, so far I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. Bear in mind, this is all going to be sanded down to probably 1200 grit ultimately, and then buffed out. I'm trying to make it look like chrome. It's going to be polished aluminum that should resemble chrome somewhat. So the next thing I need to do is put that rectangular opening in here. That rectangular opening has to exactly fit the dimensions of this. And it has to be completely centered between these two holes. So that's what's next. A lot of measuring. 5 and 5 inches. That'll make it just big enough. That's the length. Well, we'll call it 1 7/8 inches, but anything between 1 7/8 and 2 inches should work. I might make it just slightly bigger. I'm going to put my measurements onto this paper template. I should say I'm going to make a paper template that's the same measurements that I just took. That way I can take that paper template and physically put it on the piece that I'm going to cut, and I'll be able to visually see when it is 100% centered between those two holes. Always cut with a straight edge when you're doing something like this. Don't trust a pair of scissors to get that line perfectly straight. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to cut just inside these pencil lines to make sure that the hole isn't too big. That is 1 7/8. That is just a little bit smaller than 1 7/8, so I'm going to redraw this line. Had to change up my zip disc. It was getting a little bit difficult to get all the way to the edge. There we go. I just got to clean up the edges a little bit and then test fit it on the radio. Unfortunately, I made a few little gouges in here, but I think they'll all but disappear when I get to the sanding stage. All right, folks, it fits. There's a little bit of a gap around the edge, but I'd rather have a little bit of room in there than to have it too tight to where I can't move it around. So to really make aluminum shine, the polishing process starts with sanding. I'm going to start with 120 grit. That's what I've got on this belt sander. We'll spend quite a bit of time with that to get all the gouges and scuffs and try to make it look as good as it can. Then by hand, we'll go to 220, 400, 600, 800, 1000, finishing off with probably 1500. If I have that, or 1200 if I have that. And then we'll hit it with the polishing compound, but this is how it starts. 220 grit. Moving on to 400 grit. .600 grit. .800 grit. .1000 grit, and we're going to switch to wet sanding. All right, last we're going to hit it with some 1500 grit, and then we get to actually polish it. All right, all the sanding's done. Next up is the polishing. I've got a cotton polishing pad on the end of my Dremel. That's what we're going to use. And just some basic metal polishing cream, nothing fancy, stuff you can get at any auto parts store. I don't know how the camera's picking this up, but I'm super happy with that. This baby gleams pretty darn close to a piece of chrome. Just some nice polished aluminum. That's going to look really nice in the car. There's the two parts side by side. On top you got the original 1956 Studebaker part. On the bottom you got the part that I just made in my garage in 3.5 hours out of a hunk of aluminum. It's not quite as shiny as chrome. It's, I'd say, 90%. In any case, it's going to look really good in the dash of the car. It's going to allow me to put a modern radio in there, modern stereo in there, and still keep a somewhat original appearance, which is what I was hoping to do. That's the objective. There it is, installed in the dash of the car. I'm happy with it. I like the way it looks. It does resemble the original 1956 Studebaker part, so I'm happy about that. I'm happy that the aluminum polished up so nice. I've got the original Studebaker knobs on there, and yeah, it's a good look. I do have the original radio. I can always put that back in the car anytime I want, but for now, this will give me some tunes. And having that bezel on there that resembles the original part, to me, is the icing on the cake. It really makes it just that much nicer.